Hello and welcome back to my Dandelion Diaries. So this video is going to be all about these right here. So these are the Pilot Mixable Color cartridges. They are said to be exclusively for parallel pens. It even has a warning on the back that says this cartridge is exclusive for Pilot parallel pens. Don't use it for other writing instruments. I have to say I have used them in other writing instruments and I have had no problems. I haven't put them in like a Pilot Vanishing Point or any of like the more expensive Pilot pens. I've put it in a Pilot Metropolitan. I've put it in my Pilot Prera. I've never had a problem with putting them in the fountain pen. And I wanted to show a quick comparison of what the cartridges are like with the traditional Pilot cartridges that are more for fountain pens, just so you can kind of see that they're the same. Anyways, this pack has the multicolor, so every single color you could get from this line. I love that they have this in a multi-pack. I wish they would sell the other ones in a multi-pack, just because you never know what color you might want, or maybe you want to travel with a bunch of different colors at once. I love that there's a multi-pack. If you wanted to get singles, they have them in these other boxes. It's a much thinner box. It has 6 cartridges in this, 12 cartridges in this. This is the Pilot 𝗦𝗵𝘃𝗽 cartridges. These are probably more common. This is just the green one. I don't have all of the colors of these other, the 𝗦𝗵𝘃𝗽 or the regular fountain pen ones, but I wanted to show that the color range, if I can get this open, it's a brand new pack. Not the color range, sorry, the cartridge size. So this one is the 𝗦𝗵𝘃𝗽 green, and this one is the parallel mixable green. They are the exact same cartridges. The only difference is the one for the Pilot mixables has a little ball in it. I'll try to put this close to the mic so you might be able to hear it. Basically, it's just a tiny little ball that floats back and forth in the cartridge. The regular ink cartridges, like the 𝗦𝗵𝘃𝗽 or the regular ink ones, do not have that little ball. I guess another thing to note is they both have this little cap at the top that shows what color they are. To me, they look exactly the same shade of green. I'm not going to be swatching the different brands together, or like the different, I guess, groups together. So like not 𝗦𝗵𝘃𝗽 versus mixable. I'm only going to be swatching the mixable ones today, just because I have all of the colors since it comes in a multi-pack. Maybe in a future video, I will do the regulars and the 𝗦𝗵𝘃𝗽 versions as well, if I can get a hold of all of the different colors. But for now, just the mixables. But in terms of the little stopper at the top, I feel like the color is the same. But the ink, I don't know if the camera's going to pick that up, but in the little plastic cartridge, the ink looks different in terms of color for each one. Just for fun, we'll do the pink one as well, since I have the pink regular one sitting here. As you can see, these look very different in terms of the ink color, so these will likely be a very different shade of pink. Again, the one on the left here is the mixable, and the one on the right is the plain ink. They both have the same color stopper though, which again, I find interesting that the stopper's the same, but the ink color is very, very different. Again, I'm not going to be swatching this brand today. I'm only going to be doing the mixables, but maybe in a future video, if I can get a hold of all these colors, I will definitely swatch them out for you guys. Before I get into swatching these, I do want to give a shout out to Tony for suggesting this video, since I had the cartridges before in my videos. So thanks, Tony, for this idea. I hope this is going to be up to your standards, and I would love to do the rest of the cartridges if I have the chance to pick them all up. But for now, I'm going to squirt all of the cartridges into this plastic palette here and just kind of start swatching them as I go. I'll try to label off what colors they are based on the color names on the top of the box. So in order to kind of save my water over here, I'm going to just do lightest first and work my way around. The way that I'm going to be puncturing these today is with a flat syringe. You could easily just put this in like the nib or the feet of the pen and just pop it that way. I don't want to dirty up any more of my pens, so we're just going to be using a flat nose syringe to do this. I will say this is going to be messy, so I'm probably going to do it over here on top of my towel so I don't like splatter onto the page, but I will try my best to get this on camera. Here, I'll move my little towel on top. So I'm basically going to just push on one side of the cartridge. So there's usually 2 points in this little top part that holds it together, almost like a, what's it called? I don't know, an axis maybe is the word I'm looking for. But I'm just going to push with the flat nose of the syringe pretty firmly down on one side until it pops. You probably heard the pop. I don't know if you saw the pop, but you heard it. And then I'm going to have access to the ink. So you can see here how it kind of just folded in half. Maybe. I don't know if the camera is going to focus on that good. But it's got like 2 halves here so I can access one side of the cartridge. So I am just going to syringe this out into the little palette that I put over here. And before I swatch this, you might be able to see the tiny little ball in the end of this cartridge. This one's easy to see because it's the yellow. It does have a very, very small yellow ball in here, which I don't want to tip it because there's still a little bit of ink left, but it moves around when you move the ink or when you move the cartridge back and forth. For the Pilot Mixable Yellow color, it is definitely more towards the orange side, kind of like a yellow-orange color in the base. It does, however, have some gorgeous, gorgeous shading in this, from more of an orangey tone to more of a golden yellowy sunshine color. It's very nice. I find that it does best for me in a broader nibbed pen in terms of visibility. I have never put this in an extra fine or even a fine, if I'm being honest, and I just, yeah. I will say that the parallel inks do have some different type of feel to them, like they are a bit more thick in a way, and this one does have a little bit of a sheen to it when it dries down, so maybe that's why they're not considered safe for other Pilot pens. But again, I've put them in my Metropolitans and in my Pilot Prera, and I've never had any problems with it doing anything, and nothing to the feed, nothing to the nibs. It's behaved just fine. Next we have the Pilot Mixable Orange, and this one is a bit more of like a corally orange color. I think I've actually swatched this one before in one of my orange explorations, but the color on this is so vibrant and pigmented, which is another thing I will say about the parallel cartridges or the mixable cartridges, whatever you want to call these. They do have a lot more pigment to them. They are very vibrant, and again, maybe that's why they're not considered safe. Maybe the pigment molecules are too big, but again, I've never had any problems. But the color of this is absolutely gorgeous in terms of like a nice corally reddish orange color. There is almost a pinkness to it as well, and again, it does have a little bit of a sheen when it dries down. For the Pilot Mixable Red, this is what I would consider a true red color. I personally actually haven't found too much distinction between the regular Pilot Red and the Mixable Pilot Red. I know I'm not comparing them on video, but to me the colors are pretty much the same. I would definitely say this Mixable Red is much more pigmented. It's very vibrant, and it does again have that little bit of sheen to it when it dries down. I honestly really like this red. It is a very true red. It really does remind me though of like the correction papers you would get back from school when your teacher would mark up your page with a bunch of wrong answers and you get a bunch of red slashes. That's honestly what this color reminds me of, and I'd say it's pretty true to a red color that you would get in a classic ballpoint red pen. For Pilot Mixable Pink, again, this one is much darker than the traditional Pilot Pink, like I showed in the cartridge earlier when I compared the two. But the color of this is so much my favorite color of pink. I don't know how else to describe this other than it's like red hot pink, because it has a redness to it, but it's still very bright pink. In writing, I absolutely adore this in a fine nibbed pen. I put this in my fine nibbed Pilot Metropolitan and absolutely adored it. It was just fantastic to write with. I loved this color. I'm not usually a pink writer either, but this one just happened to just hit for me when I was using it. I would say, comparing it to like some other color pinks, it definitely leans more probably towards the fuchsia-y side. It does have almost a purpleness to it in addition to the red. It's just a very unique, beautiful color. I really, really like this one out of the whole group that we're going to be swatching today. Next up is the turquoise one from the Pilot Mixables, and this one is another one of my favorites from this group just because of the richness of this color. It is definitely more of a marine blue color. I wouldn't necessarily call this turquoise, but it definitely has a nice cerulean look to it. It has a beautiful shading to it as well. I usually get a tone from like a darker blue to a lighter blue with it, and it does have, again, very minor sheening to it, much like the other ones in this group. But the color of this is just so gorgeous. To me, this is like if 𝗏𝗏𝗁𝗃𝗃 had actual strong pigment in it and it wasn't kind of watery looking, this is the color we would get, and I absolutely adore it. Definitely one of my favorites, much like the pink one. This is one I typically reach for as well and use up quite a lot. Next up we have Pilot Blue, which to me is actually more of like a blurple in a way. It has a very good purple lean to it, and I think that mainly has to do with the red sheen that it does pick up as it dries down. I will say this is a very dark blue. It looks very indigo-y almost, yeah, indigo is probably a good color for like how blurple this looks, but the richness of this one again is very, very pigmented. It is a very strong blue. I almost want to give this the name like cobalt or something, just because it has that kind of jewel toned vibe when you look at it. In terms of writing with this one, I don't know, it's like another blue ink. It's not special to me. It doesn't have anything that's like, wow, it's a blue ink. It does have, again, like that sheen I was saying, but there's not really any shading, and the color is a bit darker than just your plain average blue color. Next we have the one called Violet, and I would say this one is a good name for this ink. It's kind of a red leaning purple. It does have almost a magenta vibe to it too in some areas. It doesn't really have any shading, but it does have sheen. Again, like almost all of these inks, they aren't strong sheening by any means. It's just they have a little bit going on. I would say the pigment on this is opaque. It is super, super pigmented. It is very dark. It honestly reminds me a lot of the 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏 Purple Violet, just not as, I don't know, I feel like that one's a little bit darker than this. But the Pilot Violet is nice. It is a good standard purple color. I think they named it really well. It's a pretty ink. I do like it, but I don't really reach for this one very often, probably because I just have so many other purple inks. But this one is definitely a beautiful purple. If you like purple inks and you wanted to get something in cartridges, I think it's really nice. Next we have Pilot Sepia, or Sepia, depending on how you wish to pronounce it. And I think this one is like brown black is the best way I can describe it. It's not, wow, it's another ink. I mean, this would be a great everyday writing color. Honestly, it's a great office color. I like that it's off black, and I like that it's brown because I definitely go more towards the brown side of things. But the thing that I wish this ink had is shading. I wish it had kind of like a range of maybe like a more lightish brown to a darker brown, but my experience with it, it's just really flat, and it's a nice brown black ink. I mean, that's what I got. It does again have a very minor amount of shading, or I mean, not shading, sheening to it when it dries down, but it's again just kind of your standard brownish black color. It's not super exciting like some of the other ones, like the turquoise or the pink. Like I want this one to be more exciting than it is. Next up we have the Mixable Green, and I have to say I have mixed feelings on this one. So when I originally got this ink cartridge and I tried it out in a pen, I didn't do a swatch or anything. I just was like, I want to write with it immediately because it's a cartridge, easy, just pop it in the pen and go. When I was writing with it, I was like, wow, this is a really pretty green. And then I started to get this, like, I don't know, it was like a weirdness to it. It wasn't green all the time. And I mean, it does have some shading to it, so maybe that's what I was picking up. And I was only using this in a fine nibbed pen when I used it at the time, but I just really didn't fall in love with this color. And I love green. Green is my favorite color, so it's kind of like really sad. I would say that I think the problem I have with this ink is it's almost too pigmented. Like, there's variation in it between like a medium-ish green to more of a darkish green, and there is a little bit of sheen to it as well. So it does have some interesting things going on with it in a swatch. But in writing, I never got it to do anything that I wanted. And again, I know I put it in a fine nib pen, so it's probably user error, but it's just, I don't know, there's just something too much going on with this ink. And then for the last green that comes with this mixable color family is the light green, and I love this color. So much like the pink and the turquoise, this is another one that I really reach for when it comes to this collection of inks. And I think it's just because it says it's light green, but it has other green in it. So it does have a little bit of shading from like this yellowy green color to more of like a green. And in writing, especially in a medium nib pen, I love putting this one in my medium Pilot Prera. It is just such a fun experience to see all of the different range of green. And maybe it's because I love green, it's my favorite color, and this ink gives me a range of green in one ink. I love it that much, but it's definitely one of my favorites from this group of inks as well. The second to last ink that comes in this pack of 12 is the blue black, and I have to say this one is blue black. It is the epitome of that color name. It is black, it is blue, it is gorgeous. I would say this is definitely a dark, like very dark blue black. It does lean more towards the black side. I consider this much like the Sepia with the off black family in terms that it just has a little bit of blueness going on, but it's primarily black. I honestly really like this one. I don't write with blue black very often just because I, again, prefer more, I guess, the brown side of the blackish range, but it is a very beautiful blue black ink, and I do like this one. And then last but not least, we have your standard black. So the mixable black is black. I mean, it doesn't really have any other color to it than black. It's pretty opaque, honestly. I mean, it's okay. It's a black ink. I'm not wowed by black ink most of the time just because I feel like they're all really similar. It's the off blacks that really get my attention. This is just another black ink to have in a collection. I would say if you needed a like sketching ink, this one may be a good one because it's really opaque. I don't think these are waterproof. I've been able to wash everything with water and it all comes off, so I don't think they're waterproof by any means. But I would say that it's a nice dark black ink. If you were to just do line drawings with it and not paint over it, you would be just fine. Okay, now that I have all of these down, I'm going to let them finish drying, and then I will come back and zoom you guys in and show you a little bit more of the properties up close. So I will see you guys in a minute. Okay, I'm back. Everything is pretty much dried down most of the way. There's a few wet spots over here, but I'm going to go ahead and zoom you guys in and show you the close-ups. So starting off with the yellow from the mixable set, again, like I said, it is definitely a yellow orange. It does have some very nice shading to it. Again, more of like a bright sunshiny yellow to more of like an orangey yellow color. I like this one. I think it's a really nice yellow. It is very, very opaque and very, very pigmented. The sheen on it is almost an orange color, so you can't really tell. I don't even know if it's going to pick up on camera, if I'm being honest. It is very minor. It doesn't really show up a whole lot in my experience. It's just kind of there. It adds a little bit more to the orange side of the color, but it's just a nice sunshiny yellow orangey color. Then we had Pilot Mixable Orange. This one definitely got a little bit of splatter on it, and that's what that black spot is, but it does have a very minor kind of greenish sheen to it. Don't know if the camera's going to pick that up again. It is still kind of wet here. I will say with these inks, they do not dry super fast. They are pretty wet for a long amount of time, and I think it has to do with the consistency and that they're meant to be used in those parallel pens. In the fountain pens that I've used them in, again, the Metropolitan and the Prera by Pilot, I've never had them dry super fast. They've just been a little bit wetter. I do use like, what's it called? The ink blotting paper or just paper in general in between my pages when I'm writing, so I don't really have any smearing, but they are a bit wet. This orange color is definitely more on the red-orange corally side. It's very, very pigmented, very opaque. Again, a very beautiful color, a very unique orange as well. I don't know if I could really consider this as true orange. It's definitely more on the red orange side. Then we had Pilot Red. Again, I consider this one to be a very true red color. It doesn't lean super pink. It doesn't lean super blue. It doesn't lean super orange. It's just kind of a neutral in the middle section there. You may be able to see a little bit of the sheen going on this. It's almost like a goldish color. It's speckled throughout the swatch, which I think is kind of interesting. I don't remember it ever doing that before, so maybe it's just the way the paper is or something on my hands that got in the way, but it's definitely a true red color. Nothing special with like shading or anything, just that little bit of goldish sheen that shows up. Then we had the Mixable Pink, one of my favorites. I love the pigment on this. The more I look at it, it actually reminds me of a very opaque version of like the Iroshizuku Momiji or the Kosumosu. Not quite either of those, but maybe like the in-between version of it. It's very beautiful. The pigment is darker reddish hot pink. Again, I want to say like Red Hots, but the pink version. I don't even know if that exists, but that's what comes to my mind with this. It does have a little bit of a green sheen on it as well. I don't know if the camera's going to pick that up, but it's just kind of like haloing some spots in here. It's not super strong. Then we had the Mixable Turquoise, one of my favorites. I love the shading on this one. If you have the Pentel Sign brush pens, this one looks almost exactly like one of the light blues from that collection, especially with the different shading it has going on, from like this lighter like cerulean color to a darker marini cerulean color. Again, I don't really consider this to be a turquoise by name. I consider this to be more of like a cerulean blue, maybe even like a lighter blue color. I just love the shading on this because it shows up very well in every nib I've tried it in, all the way down to an extra fine. It's gorgeous. There is a very, 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 very minor red sheen with this one. It's not super strong. Again, I just love the pigment on this. It's just such a unique color and so beautiful. Then we had Pilot Blue. Again, I consider this more dark blue, maybe even towards the indigo side. On camera, it's showing up very bright, and in person, I feel like it's a bit more, I don't know, like moody, like nighttime in a way. There is a kind of reddish black sheen on this one, a little bit of shading to a darker blue. I personally have never got it to shade in the fine or medium nibs that I've put it with. It's just been kind of blue throughout. It's a nice color. It's pretty standard, and I do think what I said earlier about like the gem toned or jewel toned like cobalt-y kind of vibe, it definitely does have that going on with it. Then we had the Mixable Violet. I love this one. Again, I feel like the 𝗦𝘃𝗍 purple and the regular Pilot purple are close to this, but not quite the same. This does have a very bright green sheen to it. On camera, it's showing up very gold, but in person, it's definitely bright green. I would say, I don't know, it does remind me a lot of the 𝗬𝗓𝗏𝗄𝗏 Purple Violet still. It's just not quite as dark as that one. It's definitely more purple. Then we had the Sepia or Sepia. Again, I consider this brown black. It's very dark. It does hopefully in some pen have some kind of shading with it, because this is my problem with this thing I talked about when I swatched it. It's like, it wants to be kind of like a shading brown to black, but it doesn't quite reach it. It's so close, but it's not quite there. I've never got it to shade in writing or even in the swatch, but you can see that it's trying, with a little bit of the brown peeking through at the back here and the black in the middle. It's a beautiful off black color. I would definitely steer more towards this than the blue blacks, but it's just too dark for what I want. I want it to have more shading. Then we had the green. Again, this one is okay. I love green inks, and this one is just like, hey, it's a green ink, like, woo. It's trying to have shading. It does shade a little bit, but not quite enough for me in terms of what I'm wanting with a color like this. It does have a little bit of a black sheen. There is a wet spot right here, but the rest of this over here is kind of blackish sheen. It's pretty. It's a nice deep green color. It is like the pigment of what I would consider the Crayola green marker. It is just a standard green color. Then we have light green, which is actually one of my favorites from this collection. I do have a box of these that I showed at the beginning. I love the shading on this. It goes from this kind of like limey light green color to this more medium like grassy green, and I love that. There is a sheen on this one, but it's not really picking up because it's still kind of wet here, but the sheen is more of like another green color. It's not super crazy, and even then I don't really get it to show up with a lot of sheen in the writing that I've used with this one. It's just pretty much just shading with a very minor amount of sheen. Then we had the blue black, which does have a bit more wetness going on, but the sheen on this one is black. I consider this to be really dark for a blue black. It definitely, you know, reaches its name for a blue black, even though I consider it a little bit more black with a little bit of a blue tint to it. But it's very nice. It's a great everyday writing color. I would be really interested to see if you were to put this in like the parallel that's like, what is it? It's like 12 millimeters, something like the really fat one, and you did calligraphy style writing with this, if it would show up with shading, because it does have almost a more bluish tone to it in some areas and more black in others. So like it wants to have shading, again, much like the sepia up here. Like it wants to have shading, but it doesn't quite reach it. So maybe if you put it in a certain style of pen, you can achieve that. But in terms of like the big swatch, it hasn't quite reached that for me in terms of shading, which is probably why I like it, but I'm not going to reach for it all the time. And lastly, we just have the Mixable Black. Again, it's a black ink. I don't really have much else to say with this one other than it's a pretty standard black. It does have some sheening that is, again, black. It's very close to the Pilot and 𝗦𝘃𝗄𝗏 black, and it's also very close to the standard Pilot black. It's just a nice black ink. Great everyday writer. Yeah, just it's a nice black. Alrighty, again, when it comes to these, it does say on the box that they are only meant for the parallel pens. I have put them in my Pilot Prera and also my Pilot Metropolitan. So this is the Pilot Metropolitan I have handy, and do I have my Prera handy? I do. And this is the Prera that I have. So like I've put these inks in both of these pens and never had any problems with the feed or nibs or anything like that. If I had to pick some favorites from the group, it's definitely light green and definitely turquoise, and then this pink. I don't write with pink that much, but this color is just so, I don't know, there's something about it that just pulls me to it. Second would probably be the violet, even the sepia color up here, and the yellow is really pretty. I just find this to be a little illegible if it's too fine of a writer, but that's common with most yellow inks. Another thing I will add with this is you get all of these colors in one box. You can buy all of them at once to try them out. I love that. Pilot, if you have a rep that watches this video or something, please recommend putting all of the other colors like this into a mixed set, like the ones from the 𝗦𝘃𝗄𝗏 brand and also from the classic ink brand. I would love to have like a box with all of them in one thing. That would be so nice. So yeah, just know that you can get all of them together in one set, or you can buy them individually in packs of 6. This little box cost me $4.50, I think, before shipping, which I think is a great deal if you wanted to try a whole bunch of different colors and use them at your, at whatever your risk is if you want to put them in a Pilot pen that's not a Pilot parallel. All right, I think I'm going to stop there. If you have any questions about this, please let me know in the comments. I'll do my best to answer what I can. I got this specific pack off of Jet Pens. I will try to leave a link to it below. I'm not sponsored by this at all. I just love playing with ink, and this was highly recommended by Tony specifically, which again, shout out to you, Tony, for suggesting it. But yeah, thanks again so much for watching, for joining me here today, for playing with some inks, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.